What if I told you that the absolute fastest way to get what everyone, culturally calls a summer body was to literally throw away your scale and actually eat more food?
I mean, it sounds like total clickbait.
Right. It totally does. But just think about it for a second. Because it happens every single year. The weather starts getting just a little bit warmer, right?
Yeah, out come the T-shirts.
Exactly. You bring out the lighter clothes you haven't worn in months, and suddenly you find yourself just, standing in front of the mirror.
Doing the tilt.
Yes, you do the
They
little
call that.
tilt, you turn side to side, you subtly tighten your midsection, and this singular, slightly panicked question just pops into your head.
How fast can I fix this?
Exactly. How fast can I fix this? And almost immediately, that panic translates into, well, self-punishment.
Yeah, it's a completely universal, anxiety-driven ritual. People just instantly default to the most aggressive, restrictive measures they can think of.
Right. We immediately think, I'm going to starve myself on a strict celery and water diet, and I'm going to run on the pavement until my knees literally shatter.
Which is the worst thing you could possibly do.
It really is. So our mission today in this deep dive is to completely shatter those toxic myths. We're dismantling the entire concept of starvation diets and, endless cardio.
Yeah, we are going to crack the actual scientific code of building a body that lasts. And you do that by working with your biology, not fighting against it.
And to do that, we are pulling from a highly illuminating source today.
We're breaking down a specific lecture from Gary Brecka's Ultimate Human Platform. Specifically, it's episode 254.
Right. And Brecka is heavily focused on, the intersection of human performance, longevity, and cellular biology.
Exactly. And what he lays out in this lecture completely contradicts the mainstream fitness narrative that most of us have just been spoon-fed since, the 1980s.
Which brings us to the ultimate paradox we're exploring today. Because to physically transform, you actually have to do something that feels deeply, deeply uncomfortable for most chronic dieters.
You have to stop measuring your relationship with gravity.
Yes. You have to stop looking at the scale. We are exploring the physiological mechanics of body recomposition. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Because going from that sheer panic of getting in shape to the calm, scientific reality of what a transformation actually requires, that's a massive paradigm shift.
It's huge. Brecka states that transformations are built by preparation and structure, not starvation.
So let's address the elephant in the room right away. Total body weight. Why do we need to throw the scale out the window?
Well, because the scale is fundamentally a deceptive instrument when you're talking about human health.
A liar, basically.
Totally. A standard scale measures one thing and one thing only, which is the gravitational pull of the Earth on your total mass at a given second. It cannot differentiate between, bone density, water retention, organ weight, undigested food in your gut, muscle tissue, or adipose tissue, which is what we call body fat.
So it's just one big dumb number.
Exactly. When people say they want a summer body, they almost never actually mean they just want to exert less force on the ground.
Right. Nobody cares about the physics of their footprint.
Exactly. What they are actually asking for is a change in body composition. They want a lower ratio of body fat and a higher ratio of lean muscle mass.
I feel like we really need to pause on that because society conditions us to view that little digital number in the bathroom as like the ultimate judge of our self-worth.
It's toxic.
Yeah.
And it's scientifically inaccurate.
Right, because you can have two people who are the exact same height and they both weigh exactly 175 pounds, yet they look like they belong to entirely different species.
Precisely. And that comes down to the stark biological differences between muscle and fat.
Tell me more about that.
Well, muscle is an incredibly dense, highly structured, metabolically active tissue. Fat, conversely, is primarily just a storage tissue.
Okay.
It's much less dense. So it occupies significantly more physical space per pound.
I've always thought about this using a visual, but tell me if this tracks biologically.
Sure. Lay it on me.
Imagine you take a pillowcase and you stuff it with 1 pound of fluffy feathers. It bulks up, fills the whole space, spills over the edges.
Right.
That's body fat. Then you take a 1 pound block of solid iron. You can just hold it in the palm of your hand. It's dense, compact, takes up very little physical real estate. That's muscle.
I think that's an excellent starting visualization for volume. But we want to take that analogy a step further into the biology.
Okay, let's do it.
We have to recognize that the iron isn't just sitting there. Muscle is active. It requires energy just to exist in your frame.
Oh, right. It burns calories just by being there.
Exactly. But the feathers, the fat, they're just sitting in the pillowcase waiting for a famine.
Just dead weight.
Right. So when you focus solely on dropping the number on the scale, you often end up losing the iron.
The good stuff.
Yeah. You lose your dense muscle tissue and bone density while you retain the fluffy feathers. You just become a smaller, softer version of your current self.
So you don't actually change the physical architecture of your body?
Not at all.
So the scale lies and composition is the actual goal.
Hmm.
But here's what I get confused, and I think a lot of listeners get frustrated here too.
Yeah, there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Because for decades, every bodybuilding magazine and fitness influencer has sworn that you absolutely cannot build muscle and lose fat at the same time.
The classic bulk and cut myth.
Exactly. They say you have to spend 6 months bulking, eating a ton of food, and getting kind of chubby just to build muscle, and then 6 months cutting.
Starving yourself to lose the fat and reveal the muscle.
Right. But Brecka's material says that's a myth. He claims we can achieve the holy grail, body recomposition, doing both simultaneously. How is that biologically possible?
Well, it is entirely possible. But we have to introduce a major caveat right up front, which Brecka is very transparent about.
Okay, what's the catch?
Body recomposition does not happen at the exact same rate for everyone. It's a highly specific adaptive response.
So who does it actually work for?
The clinical data shows it's overwhelmingly most effective for 3 distinct populations. First, absolute beginners to resistance training.
Okay.
Second, individuals carrying a higher than average body fat percentage. And third, individuals who previously had muscle, stopped training for a long time, and are now returning.
Wait, so if I'm listening to this and I've been going to the gym consistently for 5 years, pushing heavy weights, and I'm relatively lean, I'm just excluded from this physiological magic trick.
Pretty much, yeah. For advanced trainees, it becomes much, much slower.
Why do the beginners get to cheat the system?
It's not cheating. It's all about the magnitude of the biological signal and the availability of resources. Let's look at the mechanisms here.
Okay, break it down for me.
Your body is fiercely efficient. It hates expending energy to build new tissue unless it is absolutely forced to for its own survival.
Because building muscle is expensive, biologically speaking.
Exactly. So if you are an advanced lifter, your body has already adapted to the stress of lifting weights. The stimulus just isn't a shock anymore.
Right, it's just another Tuesday for your nervous system.
Exactly. Furthermore, because you are lean, you lack a massive surplus of endogenous energy, meaning stored body fat.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so you don't have that stored energy to fuel the highly caloric process of building new muscle while simultaneously being in a caloric deficit.
So for the beginner, lifting a barbell is like setting off a biological fire alarm.
Yes, because their nervous system has never experienced that kind of load. For a beginner, the sensitivity to mechanical tension is just incredibly high.
The cells are basically screaming.
They really are. They're screaming, "We are not equipped to handle this stress. We must build stronger structural proteins immediately."
Wow. Okay, so consider which camp you fall into, right? If you're a beginner or you have some extra weight to lose, this is amazing news for you.
It is. Now combine that high sensitivity with an individual who has a higher body fat percentage.
The feathers.
Right, the feathers. Building muscle requires a tremendous amount of energy. Normally, you have to eat surplus calories to provide that energy.
But if you have the fat.
Exactly. If you have excess body fat, your body essentially says, hey, we don't need extra food for this construction project. We have tens of thousands of calories of stored energy right here on our waistline.
That is wild.
The body just mobilizes the stored fat to pay the energetic cost of building the new muscle. That is how recomposition occurred simultaneously.
That makes incredible sense. You use the stored feathers to fuel the forging of the new iron.
That's a great way to put it.
But to actually orchestrate this, we have to look closely at the two completely separate biological processes at play here.
Right, the building and the burning.
Yeah, let's start with the heavy iron, the build phase. According to the deep dive source, there is a specific physiological engine we have to turn on called muscle protein synthesis, or MPS.
Yes, muscle protein synthesis is the defining biological process of adaptation.
What does that actually look like at a cellular level?
At a cellular level, it is the mechanism by which your body builds new, specific muscle proteins to repair and enlarge the muscle fibers that you damaged during a workout.
Okay, but it doesn't just happen automatically, right?
No, MPS is highly regulated. It doesn't just turn on because you went for a light jog. Brecka outlines 2 absolute requirements to force this adaptation.
And the first one is mechanical tension.
Correct. The first is mechanical tension achieved through progressive overload.
Hold on, let me stop you right there. because progressive overload is one of those terms that gets thrown around on fitness Instagram constantly.
Oh, nonstop. Usually over video of someone doing a bicep curl.
Exactly. So what does it actually mean on a biological level to apply progressive overload?
Biologically, progressive overload means exposing your musculoskeletal system to a stimulus that exceeds its current maximal capacity.
Pushing past the limit.
Right.
Yeah.
And then continually increasing that demand over time as the body adapts.
So how do we do that practically?
When you perform heavy compound movements, like a barbell squat, a deadlift, a row, or an overhead press, through a full range of motion, you create three things.
Okay, what are the three things?
You create mechanical tension, which physically stretches the muscle fibers. You create microscopic damage to the muscle tissue, often called micro tears.
Right, which makes you sore.
Yeah. And third, you create metabolic stress, which is the accumulation of byproducts like lactate in the cell.
So these three things together, what do?
They send a massive distress signal to the central nervous system saying the current architecture of this muscle is insufficient for the demands of the environment. If we do not grow denser and stronger, we will fail.
Wow. Okay, so lifting heavy weights is essentially sending a biological distress signal,
Yes, it's a call for backup.
but sending the signal doesn't mean the muscle magically grows out of thin air. We need raw materials. Which brings us to the second requirement, amino acids.
Exactly. You can pull the fire alarm all day, but if the fire trucks don't have water, nothing happens.
I love that. So amino acids are the water.
They are the biochemical building blocks of protein. When you consume dietary protein like a steak, eggs, lentils, or a whey protein shake, your digestive system breaks that protein down into individual amino acids, which enter your bloodstream.
Okay, and the critical piece of data Brecka highlights here is that your body requires adequate amounts of all 9 essential amino acids, right?
Yes, all 9. They are deemed essential because the human body cannot synthesize them from other materials. They must be ingested orally.
So what happens if you're missing one? Let's say I only get 8 of them.
If your bloodstream is deficient in even a single one of these 9, the entire process of synthesizing new muscle tissue just halts. It completely stops.
Here is where it gets really interesting and where I want to dive into the nuance. Because the source points out that not all amino acids are created equal.
No, they certainly aren't.
There is one specific amino acid that acts less like a building block and more like a biochemical trigger, leucine.
Yes. Leucine is incredibly fascinating from an evolutionary perspective.
How so?
Well, it's a branch-chain amino acid, but its primary role in this context isn't just to be incorporated into the new muscle tissue. Leucine is the master regulator of a specific intracellular pathway called the mTOR pathway.
mTOR, mammalian target of rapamycin.
That's the one. Think of mTOR as the ultimate biological sensor for growth.
Okay.
It constantly monitors your internal environment, asking, do we have enough energy and resources to support the metabolically expensive process of building new tissue?
Okay, let's try to build an analogy here to make this stick, and you can correct me where I go wrong.
Oh, for
Let's think of this whole process like building a skyscraper. Going to the gym, lifting heavy weights, creating that mechanical tension that's me submitting a work order to the city saying, hey, we need a new building here.
Okay, I like it.
And the amino acids floating around in my blood are all the concrete, the steel, the glass being delivered to the construction site. But what is leucine in this scenario?
In that framework, leucine is the site foreman, and mTOR is his whistle.
Oh, man. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, you can have the approved work order from the heavy lifting,
Yeah.
and you can have a massive pile of concrete and steel sitting on the site from the food you ate.
But if the foreman doesn't show up,
Exactly. If the foreman doesn't show up, assess the materials, and blow the whistle to tell the crew to start working, absolutely nothing gets built.
the materials just sit there.
They just sit there until they are eventually cleared away.
So how do we guarantee the foreman shows up and blows the whistle?
By hitting a very specific biological threshold. Research indicates that to maximally stimulate the mTOR pathway to get the foreman to blow the whistle as loud as possible, you need an acute spike of roughly 3 to 4 grams of leucine circulating in your bloodstream in a single sitting.
3 to 4 grams. Okay. Practically speaking, for the average person, what does that look like on a plate?
Achieving a 3 to 4 gram leucine spike requires eating approximately 20 to 40 grams of high-quality complete protein in one meal.
Wow. This is a massive paradigm shift.
It really is, especially for people who snack all day.
Exactly. So if I have a client who is eating 100 grams of protein a day, but they are doing it by grazing, eating a handful of almonds here, a little piece of cheese there, maybe a tiny 10-gram protein bar.
They might never actually turn on muscle protein synthesis.
Wait, really? Never.
It's highly likely. If you trickle small amounts of amino acids into the system, you deliver the concrete and steel, but you never cross the specific leucine threshold required to activate mTOR.
The foreman never shows up.
The foreman never shows up. This is why bolus feedings of protein, eating a substantial amount at a single meal, is far superior for muscle hypertrophy than grazing throughout the day.
And this ties directly into total daily protein guidelines, which the source material breaks down. But what really caught my eye was how these requirements shift drastically based on age.
Yes, it's a critical distinction that is rarely talked about in mainstream fitness.
What are the numbers?
For healthy younger adults, the general clinical recommendation for optimizing muscle growth is roughly 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight.
Okay, so that's the higher end for maximal hypertrophic adaptations.
Right. However, the data shifts for adults aged 65 and older.
And what do they need?
They need to maintain an intake of roughly 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram just to maintain their existing lean mass or to see very slight increases.
Wait, I need you to explain the underlying mechanism there. Because logically, my brain says an older person is generally less active. They aren't trying to become a bodybuilder. So shouldn't their biological requirement for protein go down, not up?
It seems counterintuitive until you understand a biological phenomenon known as anabolic resistance.
Anabolic resistance. What is that?
As the human body ages, the cellular mechanisms that respond to mechanical tension and amino acids degrade in efficiency. The muscle cells literally become physically resistant to the anabolic signals.
So going back to our analogy.
Yes, the sight foreman becomes hard of hearing.
Oh, wow.
A younger person might be able to activate mTOR with 2.5 grams of leucine, but an older adult might need 4 or 5 grams to overcome that cellular resistance and get the exact same whistle blow.
So they need a higher relative baseline of protein just to maintain homeostasis.
Exactly. And this is paramount because sarcopenia, the age-related loss of skeletal muscle mass, is one of the leading predictors of all-cause mortality, frailty, and metabolic dysfunction in the elderly.
So preserving that dense iron tissue is literally a matter of life and death as we age.
It absolutely is.
Okay, so we've mastered the build phase. We know how to apply tension, cross the leucine threshold, and synthesize new tissue. But recomposition is a two-sided coin.
All right, now we have to deal with the feathers.
Exactly. Now we enter the burn phase. We have to strip away the fluffy feathers. Biologically, this is called fat oxidation. And according to Brecka, this is where 99% of people who try to get a summer body fall into a devastating evolutionary trap.
It is arguably the most misunderstood physiological process in the diet industry.
So let's clear it up. What actually is fat oxidation?
Fat oxidation is the literal biochemical process of breaking down stored triglycerides, the fat in your fat cells, transporting them into the mitochondria of your active cells, and oxidizing them to produce ATP, which is cellular energy.
Okay, wait. Mitochondria, ATP. Let's make sure everyone is with us.
Good idea.
The mitochondria are the power plants inside our cells, right? And ATP is the actual electrical currency our bodies run on. So we are trying to take the stored fat, send it to the power plant, and turn it into electricity. How do we force the body to do that?
The body only initiates this process when two strict conditions are met.
What's the first one?
Condition 1 is mobilization. The fat has to actually be released from the fat cell into the bloodstream.
And what controls that?
This is entirely governed by your hormones. Specifically, insulin must be low because insulin is a storage hormone. If insulin is elevated, the fat cell is biochemically locked.
Okay, so low insulin. What else?
Additionally, you need an increase in catecholamines.
Catecholamines. I've heard of adrenaline. Is that the same thing?
Yes, adrenaline or epinephrine and noradrenaline are catecholamines.
Okay.
When you exercise or when you are in a slight energy deficit, your nervous system releases these catecholamines. They physically bind to receptors on the surface of your fat cells and trigger an enzyme that cracks open the stored triglycerides.
Like opening a vault.
Exactly. And that allows free fatty acids to spill into the blood. That is mobilization.
Okay, so we've got it in the blood. What's condition 2?
Condition 2 is energetic demand.
Yeah.
Once the fat is in the blood, it has to be burned.
Right.
You must create a sustained caloric deficit so the body has a reason to pull those free fatty acids into the mitochondria and burn them for ATP.
And here is the trap. The trap is human impatience mixed with vanity.
Oh, the worst combinations.
Oh, it really is. We look in that mirror and we don't just want to lose the fat. We want it gone by next Friday for our beach trip.
Yep. So people take extreme measures.
Right, so we decide to manipulate the energetic demand aggressively. If a 300-calorie deficit is good, a 1,500-calorie deficit must be 5 times better, right?
The tragic logic, yes.
We drop our intake to 1,000 calories a day and start running on the treadmill for an hour. Now, I know you're going to tell me this is a bad idea, but why?
Because it always backfires.
But if I have the willpower to push through the hunger, why won't I just lose the fat faster?
Because you are attempting to use sheer psychological willpower to override millions of years of evolutionary biology. And biology always wins.
Wow. Okay, what's the biology doing behind the scenes?
When you aggressively slash your caloric intake, your conscious brain thinks, great, I'm getting lean for the beach.
But the rest of the body doesn't know about the beach.
Exactly. Your hypothalamus, the primal regulatory center of your brain, senses a catastrophic drop in incoming energy. It doesn't know what a beach vacation is. It only knows survival.
So it panics.
It assumes you have entered a severe environmental famine. And in response, it initiates a highly coordinated systemic defense mechanism called metabolic adaptation.
What's fascinating here is how intelligent the body is. So what actually happens inside the body when it thinks it's starving? Walk me through the cascade.
It is a profound, multi-system biological shift. First, as your fat cells begin to shrink rapidly from the aggressive diet, they reduce their output of a hormone called leptin.
Leptin, that's the one that makes you feel full, right?
Nice. Leptin is your satiety hormone. It tells your brain you are full and safe. When leptin plummets, your brain panics.
So what does the brain do?
It immediately spikes the production of ghrelin, the hunger hormone. This turns your appetite into an overwhelming, uncontrollable drive to seek calorie-dense foods.
Okay, so I'm ravenously hungry. But let's say I'm stubborn. If I just tape my mouth shut and refuse to eat, won't I still lose weight?
Only for a very short period.
Ah.
Because the body's next move is to aggressively downregulate your energy expenditure.
Oh, so it just stops burning calories.
Pretty much. It lowers your basal metabolic rate, or BMR. Your core body temperature might drop slightly. Your resting heart rate decreases.
Just shutting the systems down.
Right. And most insidiously, your brain subconsciously reduces your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT.
Wait, what does that mean in real life?
It means you stop fidgeting. You choose to sit instead of stand. You take the elevator instead of the stairs.
You just get lazy without realizing it.
Exactly. You become incredibly lethargic without even realizing it, all because your brain is desperately trying to conserve every single molecule of ATP to keep your organs functioning during this perceived famine.
This is a massive light bulb moment.
It explains so much, doesn't it?
Yes. So by trying to lose weight faster, by starving ourselves, we literally trigger a cascade of hormonal and neurological responses that mathematically guarantee we stop losing fat.
Exactly. You hit the dreaded plateau. You are eating 1,200 calories a day. You're miserable, freezing, exhausted, obsessed with food, and the scale refuses to budge.
Because your metabolism has crashed to meet your artificially low intake.
Yes. And because the body views this as an emergency, it will also begin catabolizing, breaking down your dense iron muscle tissue to use its amino acids for basic energy.
Because muscle is too energetically expensive to maintain during a famine.
Exactly. It gets rid of the iron first.
So starvation not only stops fat loss, it actually destroys the very muscle we need for body recomposition. It's a complete disaster.
It is the absolute worst approach you can take.
So what is the alternative? How do we coax the fat out of the cell without triggering the biological famine alarms?
The golden rule, and this is heavily stressed in Brecka's framework, is to aim for a maximum fat loss rate of 1% of your total body weight per week.
Okay, let me do the math. If I weigh 200 pounds, 1% is 2 pounds a week.
Right.
That sounds agonizingly slow. If someone comes to you and says, 2 pounds a week, the magazine at the grocery store checkout says I can lose 15 pounds in 10 days, how do you convince them that 1% is the way to go?
You have to explain that the 15 pounds in 10 days is almost entirely water weight, glycogen depletion, and precious muscle tissue.
It's an illusion.
Totally. By keeping the caloric deficit moderate and losing no more than 1% per week, you execute the ultimate biological stealth mission.
A biological stealth mission. I love that.
Yeah, you stay under the hypothalamus's radar. The energy deficit is small enough that leptin doesn't crash, ghrelin doesn't spike, and your basal metabolic rate remains stable.
So you still feel normal.
Exactly. You maintain your energy levels to continue lifting heavy weights, which preserves your muscle mass.
Right.
It may seem slow aesthetically, but it is the absolute maximum speed limit your biology allows before it deploys its countermeasures.
Sneaking the fat out the back door while the brain's security system is asleep.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay, so we know how to build muscle using the mTOR pathway, and we know how to burn fat stealthily by avoiding metabolic adaptation.
Right.
But this brings up a fascinating structural question about our bodies. Let's say I eat a bowl of chicken and rice. How does my body actually decide where those calories go? Does that rice turn into dense iron muscle, or does it get stored as fluffy feather fat?
That is the multi-million-dollar question of metabolism. And it all boils down to a concept called nutrient partitioning and cellular signaling.
Nutrient partitioning. Okay, break that down for us.
To understand this, we have to look at how the body manages the macronutrients you consume. When you eat, proteins are broken down into amino acids, fats are broken down into fatty acids, and carbohydrates, like the rice in your example, are broken down into glucose.
Okay, and once that glucose hits the bloodstream, it can't just hang out there forever.
No, it needs a destination. The hormones in your body act as traffic cops, directing that glucose to either muscle cells for use in storage or to fat cells for long-term lipid storage.
And the most famous traffic cop in the human body is insulin, right?
Yes. Under normal resting physiological conditions, when blood glucose rises, your pancreas secretes insulin.
And what does insulin do?
Insulin travels through the bloodstream, binds to specific receptors on the surface of your cells, and essentially unlocks the cellular door so glucose can be pulled out of the blood and into the cell.
Okay.
If you are highly sensitive to insulin, a little bit of insulin does a great job opening the doors, primarily to your muscle cells,
But what if you weren't sensitive? What if you're insulin resistant?
which is often caused by high body fat, poor sleep, or chronic stress.
Oh.
If you're insulin resistant, the doors are rusted shut.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Your pancreas has to pump out massive amounts of insulin just to force the glucose into the cells. And in an insulin-resistant state, a disproportionate amount of that glucose gets partitioned into fat cells.
So if insulin is the traffic cop, how do we rig the system so the traffic cop always points the carbohydrates toward the muscle tissue and away from the fat tissue?
This is where resistance training proves to be the ultimate metabolic hack.
Tell me more about this, because this concept is mind-blowing.
Lifting heavy weights doesn't just burn calories while you do it. It literally alters the cellular architecture of your muscles to change how they process carbohydrates, independent of insulin.
Independent of insulin. So we don't even need the traffic cop.
Nope. It involves something called GLUT4.
Right. GLUT4. Translocation, what is that?
GLUT4, or glucose transporter type 4, is a protein found primarily in skeletal muscle and adipose tissue. Under resting conditions, GLUT4 vesicles just sit deep inside the interior of the muscle cell.
Just waiting.
Yes, waiting for insulin to bind to the cell's surface to signal them to move to the membrane and pull in glucose.
But lifting weights changes that.
Yes. When you perform intense resistance training, when you actively contract, stretch, and load a muscle under heavy tension, you create a massive internal cellular demand for energy. This mechanical and metabolic stress triggers an entirely different pathway. The physical act of muscle contraction physically forces the GLUT4 transporters to migrate to the surface of the cell membrane, completely bypassing the need for insulin altogether.
Okay, I have an analogy for this. Let's see if this works.
I love your analogies. Let's hear it.
Let's think of your muscle cell as a highly exclusive VIP nightclub in a major city.
Okay, a nightclub.
The glucose floating around in your bloodstream is a massive crowd of people trying to get inside to party. Normally, insulin is the bouncer at the front door.
Right.
The crowd has to wait in line. The bouncer checks their ID, unhooks a velvet rope, and lets them in one by one.
That's a great visual.
If you are insulin resistant, it means your bouncer is terrible at his job. The line stops moving and the crowd backs up into the street, which is high blood sugar.
Exactly.
But resistance training, lifting heavy weights, doesn't just speed up the bouncer. It actually kicks open a secret VIP back door to the club.
Yes.
And that back door is the GLUT4 transporter.
And because that VIP back door is wide open, the crowd of glucose can rush straight from the street into the nightclub without ever having to talk to the bouncer.
Exactly, but here's the catch, and tell me if this aligns with the biology, that VIP back door doesn't stay open forever, right? It only stays open for a certain window of time after you lift the weights.
That is a crucial refinement of the analogy. Yes. The contraction-induced GLUT4 translocation is temporary.
So how long do we have?
It creates a massive window of opportunity, typically lasting a few hours post-workout, where your muscle cells act like a sponge for glucose.
Okay, so that's why post-workout nutrition is a thing.
Exactly. This is why the carbohydrates you consume after a hard resistance training session are preferentially shuttled directly into the muscle to replenish your muscle glycogen stores.
They just rush in the back door.
Right. They are pulled in through that open back door so quickly and efficiently that there's virtually no opportunity for them to be trafficked over to your fat cells for storage.
Wow. So you have completely hijacked your body's nutrient partitioning in favor of the dense iron rather than the fluffy feathers.
You've rigged the game in your favor.
Which proves the ultimate point. Diet alone will never optimize your body composition. You can eat the perfect ratios of chicken and rice, but if you don't lift the heavy iron to kick open that GLUT4 backdoor, your body is relying entirely on the bouncer.
And we know how unreliable the bouncer can be.
Exactly. And speaking of the bouncer, Brecka's deep dive also heavily emphasizes maintaining general insulin sensitivity because we can't be in the gym 24 hours a day.
Right.
How do we ensure our baseline insulin response is highly sensitive when we aren't lifting?
Maintaining baseline insulin sensitivity is the bedrock of metabolic health. To keep that bouncer functioning optimally, you must adhere to the foundational principles of human biology.
Which are what?
First, maintaining a relatively low body fat percentage inherently improves insulin sensitivity because excess visceral fat secretes inflammatory cytokines that actively block insulin signaling.
Okay, so losing the fat helps the bouncer.
Yeah.
What else?
Second, sleep is non-negotiable. Clinical data shows that even 1 or 2 nights of severe sleep deprivation can induce a state of acute insulin resistance that rivals type 2 diabetes.
Wait, really? Just a couple bad nights of sleep?
Yes, it's that sensitive. You must prioritize 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep.
Wow, okay, and the third?
Third is psychological stress management. Chronic stress elevates cortisol, and cortisol's primary job is to mobilize glucose into the bloodstream for a fight-or-flight response.
Which spikes blood sugar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It chronically elevates blood sugar and blunts insulin sensitivity.
Sleep, stress management, and staying active. It really is the unsexy foundation that makes all the advanced science work.
It's not flashy, but it's the truth.
Okay, so let's zoom out. We have all of our physiological puzzle pieces meticulously laid out on the table. We understand the mTOR pathway for muscle protein synthesis.
Yeah.
We know exactly how to dodge the evolutionary trap of metabolic adaptation. We are using heavy lifting and GLUT4 to hijack our nutrient partitioning. Now we get to the practical application. How do we synthesize all of this cellular biology into an actual structured routine?
This is where the rubber meets the road.
Right, because Brecka said right at the beginning, we don't need starvation and we don't need endless cardio, we just need structure.
Structure is the dividing line between those who actually transform their physique and those who spin their wheels for years, endlessly doing randomized workouts they saw on social media.
So what is the core principle of this structure?
The absolute core principle of effective structure is periodization.
Periodization, okay.
The reality of human physiology is that you cannot walk into a gym and train at your absolute maximum intensity, pushing every set to failure 365 days a year.
Right, because if I just go in and try to max out my deadlift every single day, I'm going to eventually snap in half.
You will experience catastrophic breakdown, yes. You will fry your central nervous system, your joints will degrade, and you will inevitably sustain an injury.
Nobody wants that.
No. So periodization is the scientific antidote to this. It is the deliberate strategic adjustment of your training variables over time.
Meaning you change things up on purpose?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're talking about manipulating the load, the weight you use, the volume, the total number of sets and reps, the intensity, how close to failure you get, and your recovery periods.
Okay, so periodization just means we have a plan that changes. But there are different types, right? I've heard of people doing blocks.
Yes. Block periodization is very common among elite athletes. They dedicate an entire macro cycle, which is usually a phase lasting several weeks or months, to one highly specific adaptation.
Like what?
They might spend 4 weeks doing only heavy, low-rep strength work. Then they shift and spend the next 4 weeks doing only moderate weight hypertrophy work.
Okay, and what about for beginners?
Another method is linear periodization, which is excellent for true beginners. You start with light weights and high volume, and week by week, you linearly increase the weight while dropping the reps.
But Gary Brecka's material strongly advocates for a completely different approach for the everyday person who wants to maximize body recomposition.
He does.
He recommends something called daily undulating periodization, or DUP. Now, undulating is a great word. It sounds like a wave. What exactly is a DUP split, and why is it superior for recomposition?
A daily undulating periodization model is exactly like a wave. Instead of waiting an entire month to shift from strength training to hypertrophy training, a DUP model changes the training stimulus throughout a single microcycle, which is usually a one-week period.
So it changes day to day.
Yes. By constantly shifting the variables day by day, you expose your musculoskeletal system to entirely different types of stressors.
Give me an example.
One day, you challenge the nervous system with pure mechanical tension. The next session, you challenge the cellular metabolism with metabolic stress.
And why is that better?
This constant undulation prevents the body from ever fully adapting to a single stimulus, keeping the adaptive response and therefore muscle protein synthesis and fat oxidation chronically elevated.
This sounds brilliant, but also, a little complex. Let's anchor this in reality for the listener. Let's break down the exact 3-day DUP split recommended in the deep dive.
Let's do it.
Walk me through a hypothetical week. What happens when I walk into the gym on Monday?
Monday is your pure strength focus.
Okay.
The biological goal of this session is not to get a massive sweat going or to feel a burn in the muscle. The goal is pure mechanical tension and central nervous system recruitment.
So how do we achieve that?
You are going to work in a very low rep range, specifically 5 to 8 repetitions per set. To make 5 reps challenging, you have to load the bar with a very heavy weight, roughly 85 to 95% of your absolute 1-rep maximum.
So the weight is crushing, the reps are low, but what about the rest?
This is where people mess up.
Right, because if I'm used to those high-intensity boot camp classes where the instructor's just yelling at me to jump to the next station after 10 seconds, sitting around sounds counterproductive.
And that is the biggest mistake people make on strength days. Because the absolute load is so heavy, your central nervous system takes a massive hit. Central nervous system fatigue isn't like the burning sensation of lactic acid in a local muscle.
What is it, then?
It is a systemic neurological depletion where your brain literally struggles to send high-voltage electrical signals to your motor units.
Wow.
Yeah. To replenish the ATP creatine phosphate stores in the muscle and allow the nervous system to reboot, the rest periods are non-negotiable. You must rest a full 2 to 3 minutes between every single working set.
2 to 3 minutes. That feels like an absolute eternity when you're hyped up on pre-workout in the gym. I feel like I'd lose my focus.
It feels weird at first, yeah.
But I guess if you only rest 30 seconds, you haven't replenished the ATP, and when you try to lift that heavy weight again, you'll just fail.
Precisely. If you cut the rest short, your next set isn't a strength set. It just becomes a fatigued endurance set, and you completely miss the mechanical tension stimulus required for Monday's goal.
You just ruined Monday.
Basically, you have to honor the rest period. It is a biological requirement, not a suggestion.
Okay, so Monday we lift heavy, low reps, long rest. We spark the nervous system. We take Tuesday off.
Okay.
We come back on Wednesday. What is the wave looking like now?
Wednesday, your hypertrophy day. This is the classic tissue-building, bodybuilding style of training.
Okay, so what's the goal here?
We are shifting the focus from pure mechanical tension to a balance of tension and muscular damage. You move into a moderate rep range, typically 10 to 12 repetitions per set.
And the weight.
Because the reps are higher, the absolute load must come down to roughly 65 to 80% of your 1-rep max.
And since the weight is a bit lighter, we don't need those massive 3-minute rest periods.
Correct. The nervous system isn't being maximally taxed, so your rest intervals drop to about 60 to 90 seconds.
Okay, that feels more normal.
But the crucial element of Wednesday is time under tension.
Yeah.
You aren't just bouncing the weight up and down, you are using a highly controlled tempo.
Like moving slowly.
Yes. You are focusing on a slow, eccentric lowering of the weight, a deep stretch at the bottom, and a forceful contraction.
To cause those micro tears.
Exactly. You are purposefully trying to create those micro tears in the tissue that we discussed earlier, signaling the mTOR pathway that structural reinforcement is needed.
Okay, so Monday is the heavy powerlifter day. Wednesday is the controlled bodybuilder day. We rest Thursday.
Right.
We come in on Friday to close out the week. What is the final undulation?
Friday is entirely centered around muscular endurance, volume, and metabolic stress.
Okay.
This session is designed to radically increase your total workload for the week. You are pushing into much higher rep ranges, 12 to 15, or even 20-plus repetitions per set.
That's a lot of reps.
It is. Naturally, to achieve this, the load is the lightest of the week, hovering around 40 to 60% of your 1-rep max.
Now, if the weight is that light, how is it actually doing anything to change my composition?
Because the mechanism of adaptation is entirely different on Friday.
How so?
On Friday, you aren't trying to cause severe mechanical tension. You are trying to flood the muscle tissue with blood, create a massive buildup of lactic acid and hydrogen ions, and drive metabolic stress.
Ah, getting the pump.
Exactly. This intense metabolic environment acts as a secondary pathway to trigger muscle growth. But more importantly, it deeply depletes the muscle glycogen stores.
Oh. And when you completely empty the glycogen from the muscle, you create a massive energetic vacuum.
Bingo.
What happens the next time you eat carbohydrates?
You tell me, with your nightclub analogy.
The GLUT4 VIP doors are wide open, and the muscle sucks up all the glucose to refill the vacuum, keeping it completely away from the fat cells.
Exactly. You are biochemically priming your body for optimal nutrient partitioning going into the weekend.
Man, this structure is an absolute masterpiece.
It covers all the bases.
But I want the listener to really internalize what this means for their daily life. Look at how incredibly manageable this is.
It's very sustainable.
We are talking about 3 focused, highly structured days in the gym, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Compare that to the toxic, pervasive myth of the everyday gym grind, where you feel guilty if you don't do 2 hours of grueling cardio 7 days a week.
It's completely unnecessary.
This DUP split is a fraction of the time commitment, but because it leverages distinct biological pathways, it yields exponentially better recomposition results.
Without doubt.
But we have to address the days in between. Tuesday, Thursday, the weekend, the rest days.
The recovery days. And this is perhaps the single most critical piece of the physiological puzzle that highly motivated people completely ignore.
Why do they ignore it?
Because society tells us more is better. But dedicated rest days are absolutely essential for transformation. Working out every single day is not a badge of honor. It is a physiological error that directly leads to overtraining, elevated cortisol, and metabolic burnout.
This is a psychological hurdle I had to overcome myself.
Oh, me too.
I used to think a rest day meant I was being lazy. I viewed a rest day as a cheat day or a day where I just failed to progress. But the science shows that a rest day is actually when the biological magic happens.
It is the only time it happens.
Let's go back to our skyscraper analogy. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you are just at the construction site ripping up the old foundation and dropping off the work orders. You are literally tearing your body down.
Yes.
Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, when you are resting on the couch, eating your leucine-rich protein and sleeping 8 hours, that is when the foreman gets to work.
Beautifully said.
That is when muscle protein synthesis actually builds the new dense iron. If you never take a rest day, the construction crew never gets a moment of peace to actually build the building.
That is the exact physiological reality. The biological adaptation occurs during the recovery phase, not during the stimulus phase.
So resting is growing.
Yes. If you constantly interrupt the delicate recovery process by chronically re-stimulating the tissue with more exercise, you will stall your progress entirely. The body requires periods of complete systemic rest to synthesize new proteins and clear metabolic waste.
Which brings us to a broader concept, the ecosystem of success.
Right.
Because we spent the last hour diving deep into the microscopic cellular science. We know the macros, the hormones, the periodized workout structure. But implementing this in real life, when you have a job, kids, and stress, it requires a supportive environment.
It's tough to do in a vacuum.
The deep dive highlights some really unique modern resources that Gary Brecka provides for his community to prevent people from falling off the wagon.
Yes, knowing the biology is only half the battle, execution is the other half. Brecka has built an entire VIP community architecture centered around these exact scientific principles.
What does that look like?
The foundation of the community is highly practical. It focuses on translating this science into whole food recipes, grocery lists, and daily movement protocols.
Okay, that's super helpful.
But what is truly comprehensive is his 10-month course called Becoming the Ultimate Human.
A 10-month course.
Yes. He dedicates an entire month of this longitudinal course solely to mastering movement and fitness, breaking down these dense scientific concepts into daily, actionable habits that anyone can follow.
But the part of the ecosystem that absolutely blew my mind was the technological integration, the AI.
The Ask Gary Anything feature.
Yes. What is that?
It is a brilliant, highly constrained application of artificial intelligence. It is a custom large language model, but what makes it uniquely valuable is its training data.
So it's not just ChatGPT.
No, not at all. Brecka feeds this AI exclusively with his own intellectual property. His podcast episodes, his stage talks, his university lectures, his peer-reviewed white papers, and his books.
And nothing else.
Nothing else. He strictly forbids the AI from crawling the open web or pulling from generalized search engines.
I want to highlight why that is such a genius move for anyone trying to transform their body.
Oh, it solves the biggest problem in fitness right now.
It really does. If you are a beginner and you go to a regular search engine or a standard AI and ask, what is the best way to lose fat and build muscle? You are going to get hit with a catastrophic tsunami of contradictory information.
It's overwhelming.
One article tells you to eat 0 carbs and do the keto diet. The next article says keto destroys your liver and you should eat a high-carb vegan diet.
Yeah.
One influencer says you must run marathons. The other says cardio makes you fat and you should only lift heavy. You experience massive info overload, you get paralyzed by the conflicting data, and you end up doing nothing.
Exactly. The modern crisis in health and fitness isn't a lack of information, it's a lack of verified curation.
Verified curation, that's a great term.
By creating a closed-loop AI system, Brecka ensures that when a member of his community asks a nuanced question about nutrient timing, rep ranges, or supplement interactions, they receive an answer that is 100% aligned with the verified scientific methodology they are already attempting to follow.
So it doesn't contradict itself.
Never. It acts as a direct, personalized conversation without the chaotic noise of the internet. It provides the one thing required for physical transformation: absolute consistency.
It's like having the expert right in your pocket, acting as a guardrail to keep you on the biologically sound path and preventing you from getting distracted by the newest, shiny fitness fad on social media.
Exactly.
And ultimately, it all ties back to the foundational habits that we've discussed. Eat real whole foods with enough leucine, prioritize your sleep to keep your insulin sensitive, manage your stress to keep cortisol down, and just get stronger using a structured DUP split. You don't need to overcomplicate it.
And you certainly don't need to punish yourself with starvation. Yeah. The science of human physiology is complex, but the application of it is highly accessible if you respect the biology.
It really is. So let's take a deep breath and recap the incredible journey we've been on today.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. We started by throwing our bathroom scales in the trash, realizing that gravity doesn't define our physique. Body composition, the ratio of dense iron to fluffy feathers, does.
Right.
We learned how to activate the cellular construction foreman, mTOR, by hitting our specific protein goals and getting that crucial leucine spike.
The foreman has to blow the whistle.
Exactly. We discovered the absolute necessity of avoiding the starvation trap, ensuring we lose no more than 1% of our body weight a week, so we stay completely under the radar of metabolic adaptation and plummeting leptin.
The stealth mission.
We figured out how to hijack our body's nutrient partitioning, using heavy lifting to kick open the GLUT4 VIP door for our carbohydrates.
Bypassing the bouncer.
And finally, we laid out the genius of the 3-day daily undulating periodization split: Monday strength, Wednesday hypertrophy, Friday endurance, proving that intelligent structure, not mindless exhaustion, is the true key to success.
It is a tremendously comprehensive biological blueprint.
Yeah, it really is.
But if there is one final overarching thought, I want to leave the listener with something to genuinely mull over as you step away from this deep dive. It is about how we fundamentally view our own biology.
Okay, let's hear it.
For decades, the mainstream fitness industry has aggressively taught us to treat our bodies like simplistic bank accounts. Calories in, calories out.
Right.
If you want to lose weight, just make massive energetic withdrawals by starving yourself and running on a treadmill until you drop.
But that doesn't work.
No. Because the evolutionary science we've discussed today reveals a profound paradox. Your body is not a bank account. It is a highly sensitive, fiercely protective thermostat.
A thermostat.
If you walk into a house and smash the temperature dial down 50 degrees in 1 second, the house doesn't just quietly freeze. The internal alarms go off, the emergency furnace kicks on, and it blasts heat to save the system from freezing to death.
That is metabolic adaptation.
Exactly. The secret to building the ultimate human physique isn't fighting against your evolutionary biology with starvation and brute force. It is about gently, strategically coaxing your biology to work for you.
Coaxing the biology. I love that perspective shift. So the next time you find yourself standing in front of that mirror doing the tilt and tighten as the summer approaches, I want you to stop panicking and stop asking yourself, how fast can I fix this?
Use the science instead.
Exactly. Use the science, respect your evolutionary biology, and ask yourself, how do I build something that lasts? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.